Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
Today is February 12th, 2021, and today we are going to be filling out our still pretty early 2022 Senate elections. We'll be going through all the safe states and we will be talking about contested states and the direction in which they'll go depending on who runs or doesn't run.
Indeed, it is a very, very early prediction. We made one a few months ago. We're going to make an update today. And with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so let's take a look now at the safe states first. So we got the West Coast, obviously, and the East Coast. So for this video, we are very, very early, so we don't have a lot of data yet. And quite frankly, even if we had polling data, it's not quite good anyway. But what we are going to do is we're going to use historical precedent, and we're going to also make assumptions, I guess, from the current Biden administration, which, I mean, it's not really a good thing, but there's not really much we can do given it's this early. In the past, the election, the midterm years, the first midterm of a president's term is usually a wave for the opposition party. We saw it in 2014, in 2010, where we saw a red wave in the Obama administration. And we saw it in 2014, which was in Barack Obama's second term as president, where he also faced a red wave year. So we could see a red wave year this time around, but the difference is, given the current circumstances of COVID-19, given what we've seen with the Biden administration, if they can, get these vaccinations through, get their promises through, there is a slight chance that we might not see a red wave year, and we could be seeing potentially, a decent year for Democrats, given historical precedent. So these are all of our safe Republican seats and our safe Democratic seats. One more to address here is Iowa. I think it's safe. I don't know if Chuck Grassley is going to run for re-election, but even if he doesn't, I think it will slightly hit 15%, given how much to the right Iowa has trended, and I guess Ohio as well. All right, let's start with Alaska here. Alaska is our first likely Republican state, and the reason for this is because Lisa Murkowski is a very, very moderate Democrat. Very, very moderate Republican. And Alaska isn't as far right as most states are in the United States. And given that Alaska recently passed ranked choice voting, it's going to be really likely that we see possibly a second ballot, because Lisa Murkowski has never gotten over 50%, I believe, in at least the recent elections where she's run. But I think Democrats will likely put her down as the second choice, because they'd obviously prefer her over a more conservative Republican candidate. All right, let's head to more Democratic or likely states. The next one we have here is Michael Bennet in the state of Colorado. Colorado has moved very much to the left recently, with Joe Biden winning the state by 13.5 points, which is huge considering that in 2004, it actually, I believe it did go to George W. Bush in that election. And also given that Republicans can't really put up a great candidate in Colorado, they could run Cory Gardner, but we could see what we saw this year, which is where he basically lost by a pretty decent margin. We're going to head out to Florida. Eric, if you want to describe the state of Florida.
Yeah, so actually, in contrast with Colorado, Florida has moved gradually to the right. We see some precedent, like in 2016, Donald Trump won the state of Florida. 2020, Donald Trump won the state of Florida. So, it's a lot of a different scene as compared to 2008 and even 2012. And Marco Rubio is up for re-election here, and he's a self-made Republican that the people of Florida really just don't dislike too much, and there shouldn't be that much of a competition in Florida as to either a Democrat or Republican. I think Marco Rubio is going to keep the seat pretty confidently, as he is also an incumbent.
Yeah, I really agree. I think he will win the state pretty handily. Consider that he is pretty well known. He ran for president. He was considered for vice president in 2012. I think he'll win in a pretty decent margin there.
All right, so let's move on to Ohio. And what we're going to do for Ohio is put it as a likely. So as you know, Rob Portman is retiring, and he was a pretty good candidate in Ohio. He always won in, pretty significant margins, but because he's not running, and I don't think anyone will overcome his margins, we're going to put it as a likely for now. And also, the Democratic Party in Ohio is not putting up too good of a candidate. They're putting up Tim Ryan, representative Democrat in Ohio. He's not, going to overcome, he's not going to win back the state of Ohio because also due to the fact that Ohio has been moving to the right like quite a bit. Once again, similar to Florida, 2016, Donald Trump took it by 9 points. 2020, same thing. It's going to be really hard for Tim Ryan to really just sweep Ohio. And in the Republican Party, we don't know too many candidates, but right now, I think former or current treasurer of Ohio, Mandel, he is running here in Ohio. So if he becomes nominee, he'll likely sweep Ohio because just of how much to the right it moved.
Right, and I think it's the rural areas that has an impact on this. I believe Josh Mandel is the former treasurer. And I agree with your point here that Trump won this state by a pretty large margin both in 2016 and in 2020, despite what the poll said. He won them by around like 8 points, which is pretty big. It's the rural areas of Ohio that Republicans can win pretty easily. Tim Ryan's a decent candidate. He has pretty okay name recognition considering that he did run for president in 2020. But he's nothing like super special. So we are going to put this one as likely still, even if Tim Ryan does end up running, which it does look like he is going to be because it does look like his district is probably going to be gerrymandered out. All right. Heading now to our lean states now. Yeah, our lean states. We're going to first start with, actually, let's talk about New Hampshire first. New Hampshire is an interesting scenario. So what we're seeing right now is the possibility of the very popular governor, Chris Sununu, running for this seat. Chris Sununu is extremely popular. He has 72% approval rating last time I checked. He won re-election in 2020 for the governorship. He won by, I believe, he won with 60-ish percent of the vote. And this is despite the fact that Joe Biden won the state by around 7 points. So keep that in mind here. Yeah, he is a pretty good candidate.
If it wasn't clear, he's a Republican.
Yeah. Oh, yes, he is a Republican. The current senator of New Hampshire is Maggie Hassan, who is also a former governor. She's, I think, a pretty decent candidate. She was able to defeat Kelly Ayotte in 2016 in a very slim margin. As you know, New Hampshire is a battleground state that does slightly lean to the left. Now, here's what we see. If Chris Sununu is not going to run, which I think is pretty unlikely because I do expect him to run in 2022, we could see Maggie Hassan win by a likely margin, even potentially a 15-point-ish margin if Republicans fail to run a good candidate like they did in 2020. They had the perfect opportunity to, run a good candidate to unseat Jeanne Shaheen. They did not, and Jeanne Shaheen won by over 15 points. But I think if they don't run a good candidate, it's going to be around 5 to 15. But if Chris Sununu does run, I'm thinking this seat is tilt R. And the reason for that is because Chris Sununu has great amount of name recognition. He is very well known, very popular. So that could be a very huge issue for Democrats here. So we're going to put this one as likely for now. When he does announce, if he does announce, we are going to change this one likely to tilt R. All right. Heading now into our lean states. Let's start off with the state of Pennsylvania. Eric, if you want to start off with Pennsylvania, you can begin.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania is kind of an interesting state, and it has kind of a similar story to Ohio, but not really. So Pat Toomey, a Republican senator, is retiring. And this leaves an open spot for basically anyone to run. And what we see right now is Fetterman. I'm forgetting his first name for some reason.
Oh, John.
Yeah, John Fetterman. He is actually a Democratic socialist that has officially, secured his bid to run for Senate. And we'll see how he's able to, resonate with some more swing counties like Erie or secure metropolitan areas such as Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So that, if Pennsylvania GOP doesn't put up a good Republican candidate, then Fetterman may be able to, win a seat in Pennsylvania. And so far, the Republicans have not been putting up any good or, famous, recognizable, capable candidates so far. So right now, we do think that Fetterman, if this continues, which we don't know yet because it's so early, he could win a 1 point margin. It's definitely possible.
Right, and John Fetterman is the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania right now. I think he has a pretty good amount of name recognition, and I think he is a more progressive candidate, but that could end up resonating well with some of the people in Pennsylvania. I think he'll do especially well in Western Pennsylvania. He was the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, which is in Western Pennsylvania. I could see him having very good numbers there and winning the state. And as Eric mentioned, the Republicans have not really put up great candidates. We'll watch out if they do put a good run. They don't really have anyone good to put up anyway. We did mention Brian Fitzpatrick as a possibility. But other than him, I'm not too sure who else Republicans can put up to win this state. So we are going to put this one as a lean Democratic state, and we expect this one to indeed flip. Let's head now to Nevada, which we are going to put as, Nevada, which we are going to put as lean D as well. This is Catherine Cortez Masto's seat, who was actually considered briefly for vice president, but she ended up dropping her name from consideration. But Nevada is a swing state. It does lean to the Democrats. I think we were pretty surprised by the margin that Joe Biden won it by, given that it was only around like 2-ish points. We were expecting like 4, 5, 6 points. But I do expect Nevada to still go pretty decently for Cortez Masto. Republicans, I'm not too sure exactly who they might put up. They could put up Dean Heller again, who was the former senator, but I really think that's not really a good decision to make. I think Democrats have been doing pretty well in Nevada. They picked up the seat in 2018 held by Dean Heller with Jackie Rosen. And I think what ends up putting the Democrats over is going to be Reno, the big cities like Reno, Las Vegas, and that allows them to ultimately win the state. We are going to put this one as lean for that. But again, we have very limited data. We're going to wait for more information as soon as possible. Now heading to the state of Arizona. Arizona, let's just say the Arizona GOP is not doing very good. They have been making themselves closer and closer to President Trump, which turns off a lot of those moderate Republican voters in Arizona that, love John McCain, who was a pretty moderate Republican. And I really don't know who they can put up. If they put up a pro-Trump, very closely tied to Trump candidate, I don't think they're going to really do that well. Doug Ducey has announced that he's not running for the seat here. And given that being known, there's really no one else that great to put up here to run.
Yeah. And also, this is Mark Kelly's seat. And the reason why he's up for re-election already is because it was a special race. And, he's going to finish the continued term and he's going to have to run for re-election. But as we said in the 2020 Senate elections, Mark Kelly so far and previously, he made his name as an astronaut and then he's gone into politics. He's a very liked candidate and now senator. And, if he continues to do what the people of Arizona want and really not be controversial, it's going to be really hard, one, to find a good candidate, and two, to overcome Mark Kelly because, he won this in a couple of points, but still in Arizona, that's a pretty significant lead. And I think he's going to be able to pull it off this time as well.
Right. And I think something important to note is the demographics of the state, which has been moving to favor the Democrats more. The suburbs have been moving more to be more and more favorable for the Democrats. And that is part of why we saw the state flip to Joe Biden in 2020. All right, let's head to North Carolina now. North Carolina, this is also an open seat. Senator Burr has announced that he will not be running for re-election. He announced this in 2016. And so far, there has not been that many candidates that have declared yet. The only big name one is Mark Walker, who is a representative in the state of North Carolina, who finished his term recently, actually. We are going to put this one as lean. And there's a couple of reasons. One is that North Carolina, although it's a swing state, it still leans Republican. We saw that in the 2020 presidential election where Joe Biden failed to win the state. Cal Cunningham failed to pick up the seat. and I think, this is going off a little bit of changing here, but Cal Cunningham, he was, the safe bet, but his problem was that sexting scandal that might have impacted him. But the only way I feel like Democrats can end up winning the state is through African American turnout. In 2008, Barack Obama got the African American turnout here to about like 23% of the electorate, I believe, and that was enough to put him over and win the state. But I really don't think that Democrats can put up that great of a candidate. And I talked to Eric about this before. The only good candidate that I can see in North Carolina that can end up winning the state, that's probably going to be Governor Roy Cooper. Although we did discuss how this is pretty unlikely considering that Roy Cooper's lieutenant governor is a Republican. So we're likely not going to see a pickup here for the Democrats. So we're going to put this one as lean R. And finally, the state of Wisconsin. We actually missed one. I missed the state of Georgia as well. Eric, why don't you start off with Raphael Warnock in Georgia?
Yep. So as many of you know, Raphael Warnock has recently secured his seat in the Senate after defeating Kelly Loeffler. We'll see what he does in the Senate. So far his name kind of died down, but we'll see what he's able to do in 2 years, whether for the good or for the bad of Georgia. I think that if the current course continues, he could, keep the spot again. We think it's probably going to be somewhere in between a lean and a tilt, probably a lean for now. Things may change, disclaimer. Georgia, first of all, is not putting up any particularly good candidates as of right now. And I don't really know anyone who is going to run for now. And if they put up, once again, same thing in Arizona, if they put in someone who aligns with Donald Trump, that may not go well. And, these runoff elections are a perfect example. So if Raphael Warnock continues to, continue with the legislation that he has promised and doesn't do anything controversial, which I'm not sure what he could in 2 years, I think he's going to be able to keep this spot pretty soundly. And it also depends on who the Georgia GOP puts up, but I don't think, if it's once again closely allied with Trump, it's not going to go too well.
Right, I agree with you here. We were kind of talking about this earlier. If the Republicans do end up running Marjorie Taylor Greene, which again I think is very unlikely, but if that ends up happening, this is very far away for the Republicans to win. This one's probably going to be likely or even safe at one point for Raphael Warnock if they do put up Marjorie Taylor Greene. But I also think that the changing demographics in the state of Georgia has pushed it, more and more to the left. That's favorable for the Democrats, especially with the Atlanta suburbs. Counties like DeKalb County has moved to the left significantly. That has greatly benefited the Democrats and did contribute to both Joe Biden's win in the state and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock's wins in the Georgia runoff elections. And finally, we have the state of Wisconsin. We kept thinking about this one. What do we put this one as? You have here Ron Johnson, who we still don't know yet if he's going to be running for re-election. He said in the past he would retire, then he said he would be running, so we're going to wait and see what he does. However, with the general election, if Ron Johnson were to run, I still think that he'd win, but it'd be in a very tight margin. I would put this one as probably tilt R. And I feel like Democrats, they have a good collection of candidates. Like Ron Kine might do pretty well in the state, but it's just going to be very tough for Republicans to pick up the seat, even though it has trended to the left recently. It was still the closest Rust Belt state in 2020. Joe Biden carried it by just under, or I think just about 0.6 points, which was a very tight margin that we were not expecting. And we're going to know now that we probably shouldn't rely the polling too much in Wisconsin. We've seen in 2016 and now in 2020 again, that polling wasn't the most accurate. But this state is one to keep an eye out for. And this one could end up being one that will be flipped. Given that in 2016, we did see an upset here when Feingold was defeated by Ron Johnson. So we've really got to wait and see on what exactly happens in the state. But in general, it is very early to be making these predictions. But hey, we thought we might as well make an early one to see what happens. And with that being said, that is the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like our content, please hit subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.